I'm sure that most of you watching this video have probably heard of Sylvester Stallone. Now, for those who don't know, Sylvester Stallone is an actor who did a lot of these macho action movies from back in the day. Throughout his career, Sylvester has played all kinds of iconic roles like Rocky, Rambo, and of course, who could forget the Toy Man? But there is one Sylvester Stallone role that has since been swept under the rug over the past several decades, and for good reason, because it was kind of bad, but I'm here to shed some light on it. I am, of course, referring to Judge Dredd from Judge Dredd 1995. Judge Dredd 1995 takes place in a post-apocalyptic future consumed by crime and chaos. It mainly takes place in Mega City 1, which is a futuristic city and also one of the only locations that hasn't been destroyed by the scorching desert heat, which, something else is that one of the other remaining cities, or I guess locations, is actually Texas, which I just find super hilarious for some reason. Now, the Judge Dredd movie is based on a comic series by the same name, and I don't really know a whole lot about the comic, but from what I've heard, it's supposed to be a satire on American society. It deconstructs the roles that police officers are given in our world and how easy it is to abuse that kind of power. Also, sometimes there's like ghosts from other dimensions or something, I don't know. So, does the 1995 adaptation do a good job conveying all these ideas? Well, kind of. Almost. Judge Joseph Dredd is the greatest and most celebrated judge in all of Mega City 1. Dredd is basically the walking definition of stickler for the rules. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime, no exceptions. The Council of Judges are in a bit of a pickle, Rick. There's too many criminals and not enough judges to arrest them. Judge Griffin proposes that they should start killing people for committing smaller crimes, but the rest of the council refuse. Rico, Dredd's supposedly deceased old partner, escapes from prison and then frames Dredd for murder. The council found Dredd guilty and sentenced him to life in prison. Now this moment is very, very important for Dredd. He's basically lived his whole life worshipping the law, even adopting the catchphrase, "I am the law," but now the law has turned against him. After a battle with some post-apocalyptic cannibals, former Chief Justice Fargo explains to Dredd that he was actually a clone created by the Janus Project. He was essentially programmed to be the perfect judge. This is huge. Dredd, the man who dedicated his entire life to the service, who's deemed the greatest judge by everyone in the world, was actually a genetically engineered government puppet. Not only that, but Rico, as it turns out, is actually Dredd's brother. He too was also genetically engineered by the Janus Project. However, there was an error that instead of becoming the perfect police officer, he became the perfect criminal. Now, the thing with this twist is that, it's dumb, and I hate it. So, the reason why I don't really like this twist is because being a criminal is not a genetic thing. Like, you can't, like, program something to want to commit crime. That doesn't make any sense. Now, yes, Dredd was engineered to be buff and obedient, and he was trained to be a judge his whole life. But like, what like gene makes you into a criminal? That just doesn't make any sense. If instead Rico found out he was a clone and maybe was so disgusted by the judge's mistreatment of human life, he decided to rebel against them specifically, then it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But to, like, want to cause chaos and destruction just for the sake of causing chaos and destruction, it's like, why though? If anything, him trying to be the ultimate criminal is basically just proving that they were right and that that's how he's programmed to be. If instead his goal was to defy his programming by being the ultimate criminal, then that would make, or maybe not by being the ultimate criminal, but just by rebelling against the judges, that would make sense. That would be a reasonable reason for him and Dredd to turn against them. Now, I'm not saying that Dredd should become a bad guy, I just think the story should have had more nuance. You could have had Dredd realize that his way wasn't the best way, and over the course of the story find his redemption, and by the end, remake himself and try to be a better judge. The entire movie is building up to this whole, like, I don't know, I guess realization, but it feels only half delivered, since in the climax Rico creates this army of Rico clones that are all programmed to be the ultimate criminal, and it's like, really? This is the finale? Imagine if instead the finale was about Rico wanting to unleash an army of Dredd clones onto the city, but instead these were more like robots, programmed to not have any remorse at all. They would stomp down the streets, just killing anyone they saw committing any crime, no matter how minor. I feel like this finale would more directly address the issue with sending super soldiers to carry out law. You could argue that since Rico was still created by the Janus Project, even though he is a flaw, he is still their responsibility. And so him creating the army of super criminals is still kind of like the law going too far, but I don't know. That feels like a bit of a stretch. There's never really any moment where Dredd questions if the law isn't always right, or where he admits that he's this way because he was made to be this way. It just feels like such a missed opportunity. It felt a lot like the movie wanted to just settle for being a generic one-linery action movie instead of actually doing anything bold or unique. I'm not trying to slander Judge Dredd here, since I do feel like this movie is very overhated. I absolutely love the aesthetic of Mega One City. I feel like we don't get worlds like this in movies anymore. There's also this bulky robot that looks like a Bionicle, and this thing is so menacing. Like, legit, when I was a kid, this thing scared the crap out of me. I also like how after Dredd is arrested, Hershey begins investigating his past and finds out he was a clone. This way the next time they meet, they're all caught up and there's no, like, extra explaining that needs to be done. At one point there's a really great montage of all the different judges being assassinated. I like that part. And Rob Schneider is there. I would have liked it more if maybe he wasn't there, or if there was someone else in his place. His, comedy, I guess you could call it, really breaks up the pacing of the movie and just feels so out of place. Judge Dredd, to me, feels a lot like Titan AE. It's a movie that was building up to be really unique and different, but for one reason or another just kind of falls flat in the end and feels like a huge waste of potential. But I still think that the themes and ideas in the movie, though not executed perfectly, are still pretty relevant in today's world. And it is still just a very cool sci-fi action movie. So, if you've got some time to spare, then, go check it out. I'd recommend you watch it. It's not that long. I'll probably be checking out the 2012 reboot sometime pretty soon, and I might also go take a look at the comic while I'm at it. But until then, this has been Bradwurst, signing off. Oh no, both the hero and villain have a lisp that makes it slightly harder to take them seriously. They're too evenly matched!